here in Jersey. But before that, we're going to speak again to Deputy Trevor Pitman and to Mike Dunn about this culture of distrust in some quarters in Jersey over Jersey's political system and its media. You've been commenting this morning to the question, do you believe that Jersey has a culture of secrecy and cover-up? What's been the reaction, Claire Peters?
Well, Tony's been in touch on Facebook.com/BBC Jersey saying, well, I don't subscribe to conspiracy. All governments in the world tend to have a culture towards secrecy. This is not helped in Jersey by a tendency to hold in-camera debate, says Tony, whether that's because the law requires it or because the state's members want it. Guernsey manages with far less and similar laws without those requirements. The UK government last met in secret in the last World War. Tony thinks debates by elected representatives in the states in secret are not good and laws should be changed so that they're not as necessary.
And Rahmood says, I missed the phone-in on BBC Radio Jersey. It gave people a chance to share their views, and I believe it represented freedom of speech.
James has emailed Radio Jersey at bbc.co.uk saying this cover-up nonsense is an urban myth, and what Stuart Sivray had to say on the radio this morning makes it sound like no judge in the British Isles is worthy enough to give anybody in Jersey a fair trial. It's about time to bring this down to earth, and what some of these bloggers have written about people has in many cases been puerile anyway.
Paul has emailed Radio Jersey at bbc.co.uk. For starters, I've never seen any evidence, says Paul, of cover-ups in Jersey, but I've seen plentiful evidence of our rumour-mongering on blogs. And it's that kind of cowardly journalism which is unfair, spiteful and wrong. They spend more time, the bloggers, insulting people than coming up with proper evidence, I'm afraid.
And James emailed to say, I want to know why Rico Sorda and other bloggers think they're a better source of media when they spend most of their time writing offensive material about people. I mean, what Rico Sorda regularly writes about Senator Ian Lamarckle and the former police officers David Walkup and Mick Gradwell is not only childish to me, but incredibly offensive. Maybe he could explain why he believes such journalism even merits intelligent attention in the first place.
Simon has emailed, I can see on the blogs that you intend to interview Mr. Rico Sorda on your radio. Can I say that I'm surprised that this is mainly due to the amount of insults that he writes about states members, former police officers and journalists. He even uses offensive Photoshop cartoons, coupled with claims of covering up of child abuse. At the moment, there are calls for a cyber insult law to be brought into Jersey, and this could put a stop to such offensive and insulting behaviour going on the blogs. It should also be mentioned that the same blog has published in-camera state sittings, which was in the news only recently. I hope that this man is not using your radio station to spread even more deluded conspiracy theories and nonsense at your expense, because such people are not journalists, but simply attention seekers. Besides, all of his theories have been dismissed by the states already. Well, I think that's the point he would make anyway, but let's not talk about being attention seekers. Let's welcome citizen journalist and political activist Mike Dunn and Deputy Trevor Pitman, who also blogs. Deputy Pitman, is it worth blogging?
I think it is worth blogging because it's giving people access to different opinions, different interpretations. But what I would just like to come back to what you were talking to Mr. Dunn and your director before. Look at this. We've just heard in-camera debates. I mentioned. Well,
these are debates that are not in the public domain.
That's right. And I don't agree with them at all, unless it's perhaps national security. I don't think they should happen at all. But all the mainstream media reported was that this had been leaked. Now, the real issue it should have been focused on was the former Home Affairs Minister had told the states that he'd seen a report that was damning. Now, we've established it's fact. He could not have seen any damning report because no damning report existed. Now, shouldn't that send mainstream media's alarm bells ringing? Should it not? Which is the story, I ask you, as a professional. And yet it's only really the bloggers who've picked that up. Things come up, and if they're a bit uncomfortable, it does seem that certainly some elements of the mainstream media will not focus on. I brought up in the States, just the other day, just before Mr. Power was suspended, a complaint made on behalf of constituents through the Deputy of Greville. It ended up in the hands of the former bailiff, the bailiff at the time. Why? Why has no one dug into that? Bailiffs have no role in police work.
Mike Dunn.
Well, there's a void developing in the information business, isn't there? Unfortunately, traditional, because online is doing lots of things. On the one thing, it's allowing governments to reduce the amount of paper that they're producing. They think it's press a button, the information goes out. Newspapers are struggling for revenue. There's a void. People are desperate. There's more and more information out there, but it's not reliable information. There's a desperate need. People want to say, well, I don't agree with that. They've got the technical means. People like us you can go online, you can become your own publishing house, broadcast a newspaper immediately at very little cost. So the world is dramatically drastically changing. When the days of Mr. Guiton, when he founded the JEP, and Lord Reith in the early days, they were very strong on morality, but not very strong on free speech. And the world is changing, and it is something the BBC, big institutions, find it very difficult to keep up to date. JEP, because it's a straightforward business, and it's trying to make a profit. Revenues are going down, and you can see it's becoming much more magazine format articles, which they've obviously written a long time ago, and they put them in. The number of actual journalists, trained journalists, we talk about accredited journalists. What on earth does this word accredited mean? Why is somebody more accredited? They've got a DJ.
Well, where's that come from? I don't think the journalists themselves have come up with that title. Where's that come from?
Well, indeed. I mean, I'm a bit disappointed that so-called accredited journalists haven't even come out stronger and say, what does this mean? Because basically, we're bloggers. That's the label we've been given, bloggers, but we're not trained journalists. Now, is it necessary to be a trained journalist? No. It's all part of this group thing, this professional mystique. I mean, the classic case of a professional gone wrong is the doctor who murdered how many 100 patients? Nobody knows.
Yeah.
And the world looked on and didn't know, and the profession didn't do anything. This idea that you have a professional accredited class of people who give you information, it's obviously bunkum, isn't it?
Gentlemen, thank you both very much indeed for joining us. I'm going to speak to the Liberal Democrat MP John Hemming in just a moment or two, who has been extremely critical of Jersey in the House of Commons in the past, and we'll be asking him very shortly in just a moment or two to find out what he has to say. But first, let's pause for our morning thought. No, we're not going to go there. We're going to go to the headlines now. We'll bring you the latest news headlines, then we'll go to John Hemming, and then I'll bring you our morning thought.